Ayun. So, hi guys, good afternoon. We are the group 3 and we were going to report or discuss with you the adult that I mean the young adult literature. Sorry, I forgot to include the word young. So, may you please go to the next slide. Okay, so before we discuss with you guys our topics, we were going to have the opening prayer first. So, bow our heads and feel the. Okay, so I think you unable to hear the opening prayer, right, guys? Because on my end also, can you hear the opening prayer, guys, or no?
No.
No po.
No
Okay,
po.
okay, but okay, it's okay. But the fact that you feel the presence of the Lord and you are even you are unable to hear it, what's the important is that you read the prayer and feel every word with that video. Okay, so thank you so much. May you please go to the next slide, Miss Jana. Thank you so much. Okay, so now the reporters that is going to discuss with you guys the topics is Miss Maria Zuzan Andrada, Miss Nicole Flores, Maven Rose Masaga, and also me, Gerald Ansalioso. So next slide, please. Okay, so the objectives of our discussion is for you to understand what is the young adult literature, identify and describe the characteristics of young adult literature, and lastly is to encourage the young adults like you to connect to literature. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so now that we are here in our first activity, Miss Jana, may you please stop your share screen, and I am the one who will. Okay, thank you so much, Miss Jana. Are you still there, guys? If you're still there, please type. Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, if you're still there and you're listening to us, guys, please type "broom broom" in the chat box.
Broom broom.
Mm. Or if you're unable to type the word "broom broom," just please unmute your microphone and then please say "broom broom." Okay, thank you so much, guys. I see Miss Jana, Miss Rendon, Miss Kaizen, and the others. Okay, thank you so much. And now I'm going to share my screen. And what's okay? So the mechanics of our game is you already know or you are already familiar with our activity, right? The word search. And are you familiar with it, guys? Okay, thank you, Miss Precious, for saying yes. So yes, the word search. You only what you're going to do is that you're going to find some words, which is there in the screen or showing in the screen. Then what's good about this is that I know that we are having poor connection because of the bad weather, right? So what we are going to do for you to garner points, you are going to talk to your group and please chat in that I mean type in the chat box who is your representative. Okay, so with group I am going to ask from group 1 up until how many groups do we have? Do we have 7 groups, right? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Miss Kaisen. So yes, we have 7 groups, and I am going to ask group 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I am asking what words did you find in the word search. All right, or in the table, I mean. So okay, I am going now to share my screen. Okay. And let me know, please, if you are seeing my screen. Okay. Oh, okay. So please bear with me and give me some time, guys. Thank you so much. Okay, so here's the thing, guys. Sorry for that because I think I am unable to share my screen with you. So may I please call Miss Jana to please share her screen with us. Okay, so here's what we are going to do because I am unable, guys, to share my screen and to highlight those words. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you na lang if what words did you find to this table, or I mean to this on this screen. Okay, so please unmute your microphone, and once you tell or said the words that you find in the table, I am going to inform you that if you are right or wrong. Okay, and please let me know where is that word. Okay, please be specific. Like for example, okay, I'm going to give you one word. Like for example, the word character or characters. So the word characters, if you were going to see that, it is on the end, or right, it's on the end of the table here. Yes, on the word character. Sorry for that. I know our activity must be fun. It's so it should be I mean, you should be excited about it, but yeah, I'm sorry with that, guys, because I am unable to highlight those words for you. So okay, um are you ready, guys? We were going to start now, able for you to garner points. Okay, so may I call the group one representative to open, or I mean to unmute her microphone?
Is.
Are you the group one representative, Charles?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So okay, may I know what word did you find in the table?
Stories.
Okay, so
Stories,
may
and
I
it's on the sixth row.
okay, so there is a word stories. May I know please from what column is that? From the
Column one.
from what, yeah, starting from what
Fifth
column?
column.
Sorry.
On the Y right, and then one, two, three, four, five, six.
Okay, perfect. After the letter D. Okay, so the word stories. Okay, perfect. With that, guys, I'm going to inform you what score did you what score the your group gain. Okay, so every word that you're going to find in this table, it each word is 2 points. Okay, so you have 2 points already, Charles, on your group. So may I call group two?
Hello.
Okay, hi Precious. Then yes, may I know please?
Quality on the second column. The letter Q is in the third row.
Okay, perfect. The word quality. Thank you so much. So you have already 2 points on your group. So may I call group four now? Hello.
Hi. Narinig po?
Hi, Miss. Yes. May I know, please, what word did you find in the word search?
Genre in the first column.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Miss Jana, um giving us what is the location of that word. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. So yes, Miss Jessa, thank you so much. You already have 2 points on your group. So may I call group five?
Hello,
Hello, may I know who is this?
Dabi.
Oh, hi, Miss Daphne. Okay, may I know please what word did you find in the
Yang.
table?
Yang on the top left.
Okay, perfect. So, okay, thank you so much. We already have 2 points on your group. May I know? May I please call group? What group do we are we now? Group 6. Okay. Group 6. May I call group 6, please?
Random po.
Okay.
Literature. Second to the last. The ninth column.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
backwards.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, you have already 2 points on your group. So, lastly, may I call please the group 7?
Books. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes po. May I
The
know who is
10th column.
okay, so books. Okay, may I know? Okay, let me see. Okay. Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Already have 2 points. Congratulations. So may I know please what are the words left? So we have already the young, the characters, the genre, do we have stories already?
Yes.
Okay. So may I know do we have already history? I think I am unable yes, I'm unable to hear the words history. Okay. So with that, plus 3. Who will find the word history in the table? Plus 3 in the group.
Group 5.
Okay, may I know please? May you please open your microphone? Okay. Please, Miss Davy.
Wait lang. Hindi ko kasi alam yung row. Paano siya? Pa ladder. Pataas. Tama ba? Yung row yung
What is
patayo.
the word, what is the after, what letter after that?
B. Tama ba? Yung patayo niya. Tapos yung B yung kasunod ng history.
From what row, Miss Davy?
Ano ba yung row? Pataas o patayo? Ay, pahiga. I'm sorry. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay lang.
Basta yung ano niya, mula sa baba, it is 1, 2, 3 pataas.
Okay, after the word, after the letter.
A, then U, then the H. Tapos palado na
Okay,
siya.
perfect. Okay, perfect. So group 5, you have already 3 points. So it is equivalent or it is total for 5 points on your group. So okay, thank you so much group 5 for your participation and also the other group. Thank you so much. And now we were going to, yes, why do we do this? So these words are the words that you are going to encounter later on. Okay, so once we have our discussion. So next slide, please. Okay, so in this slide, may I call please the first discussant. We're going to discuss with you guys this young adult literature, and I'm now going to unmute myself. Thank you so much.
May I ask if how many minutes do we have, Miss Jana?
6 minutes left po.
Okay, thank you. So before we proceed to the qualities of young adult literature, histories, and genres, let us first define what is young adult literature. So, young adult literature is not a genre but a category of a fiction based on the ages of the readers, which is books is created for readers between 12 to 18 years old. Young adult literature is also called coming of age, which it provides readers with stories that are generally more advanced in terms of emotions and theme. This is young adult literature also serve as a level of reading which gives them a worldview and maturity, and exists in many genres such as fantasy, mystery, and science fiction. So we are going to discuss that later with my other groupmates. So next slide, please. So young adult literature captures the typical ideas and feelings that teenagers typically experience, such as friendship, defining their identity, and developing romantic connection. So um, that is why many people say that the books help them to to know themselves, especially for example in friendship. As you can see there is a girl reading a book. So he reads books about friendships. Then she realized how friendship is important. That is why she talks to her friends and so on. So next is the majority of young adult stories focus on teenagers who are starting to enter adulthood. That is why young adult literature is also called coming of age. They discover aspects of themselves that they were unaware of, solve their own issues, and develop the ability to accept responsibility for their actions. So that is all for my part. But let me give you one author and his story. So the famous author is Patrick Ness, which is he is most imaginative young adult authors on this young adult literature. He is famous for Chaos Walking. It is a series about dystopian world. So this dystopian world will be discussed later. So may I call Gerald to discuss the qualities of education, qualities of young adult literature. Sorry for that.
Thank you so much, Miss Maven, for introducing me. And yes, I am Gerald Anselios, and I am your discussant for this topic, the qualities of young adult literature. Okay, so the qualities first is that it reflects young adult age and development by addressing their reading abilities, thinking, and interest level. So here's the thing, guys. So okay, so the young adult literature, it consider the interest level, the abilities to read of the young adult, okay, and also their age. So come to think of it, if the 8 years old is reading a book or a story which is not appropriate to her age or to his age, what do you think will happen?
Pwede mo
Can I
bang
Okay,
answer?
ulitin?
okay. So who is this hand raising her hand? May I know, please?
Random po.
Okay, Miss Rendon, may you please give your insight? What will happen on that 8 years old if she or he is going to read a story or a book that is not appropriate on her age or on his age?
I think the 8-year-old kid might get confused with the flow of the story, and also they might encounter some inappropriate words, especially if the book is for only adult talaga. And also I think it is much better um if they could avoid those kind of books, kasi I think naka-encounter na kasi ako ng gano'n, yung pamangkin ko minsan may na-encounter siyang mga books or mga video sa YouTube na telling a story gano'n, and I think it's very inappropriate for them kasi nade-develop rin nila or parang na-adapt rin nila, especially yung mga words na ginagamit do'n. Yun lang.
Thank you so much, Miss Rendon. So yes, definitely. If a kid, or yeah, if that 8 years old will read a book or a story that is not appropriate on his age or on her age, yes, definitely. And there is no proper guidance at all with their his or her guardian, then probably that kid will might be confused regarding on the stories that he or she is reading, and it is I think it is a bad it has a negative impact on that child, because if the kid we all all right, sorry guys for that. I think it is because of my signal. Can you hear me and can you see me, guys? All right, so yeah, if that kid is seeing or reading those kinds of stories and those kinds of words, and there is no proper guidance with their guardians, there is a negative impact on them, because we all know that yeah, at their young age they are very innocent, and they are so confused. Yeah, yes, Miss Nicole Laurenti.
Narinig po ba ako?
Yes po.
For me po, if a child or a kid, specifically that 8-year-old kid, will read or read a book that is not suitable for her age, especially those books that are hard to comprehend because it uses some words that are not familiar with them. It may affect the kids' interest to that book, and they might be discouraged to read books, and because they find it hard to read, and the excitement within that book like vanishes if it is not suitable for the age of that kid.
Yes, definitely. So their interest with that book, maybe, yeah, Miss Durante is right. They are not, if they are reading those books which is not familiar on them, maybe their interest is not into that story, right? There's sometimes there's an instances that a child, yes, as I said, they're innocent, they are confused. What is that word or what is that story about? And they are asking. And imagine if there is someone who is not I mean, there is it is not their family. It is not that someone is not their guardian, and they ask that someone if may I know please what these words are, what is the meaning of those stories, and that someone give a misinformation to that kid. So there's a negative impact because if there is a misinformation to that someone give to that kid, so yes, definitely that kid will what you call this what you call this misinformed, and what you call this kalimutan ko. Yun, misinformed siya. And also, kapag nakita niya yun and he or she told that story to the to other, especially to their family or to that or to his or her guardian, and there's a confusion and syempre, di ba, nandun yung magtatanong yung, saan mo nakuha yan? And it is not appropriate on her age, right? Am I making any sense, guys? Are we on the are we on the same page? I mean, hello, can you hear me?
Yes po.
Ayun. So it is a must that the quality of young adult literature should be appropriate on the age of that young adult and also their interest. And also, please take note that when doing a young adult stories, it will based on their reading capacities. Okay, it is not about you're going to write a story. I mean, yes, if you're going to read a story or write a story and you're going to share that to a kid, then probably that kid will as Miss Laurenti said, there is no interest at all because she or he don't know what words are in the story, right? So yeah, that's it. So the next one is the deals with contemporary issues, problems, and experiences with characters whom the young adolescent can relate, including topics like dealing with parents and other adults in authority, facing illness and death, dealing with peer pressure, and so on. So qualities, one of the qualities of young adult literature is that it is associated with the issues that we have in our society. So if you are reading if you are reading and also you are watching some movies, you observe right away or immediately that it is about or it is something related to the issues we have in our society. Yeah, may you please provide me about the books or the stories, some stories or movies that you have watched that it is related to some issues that we have here in this slide. May you please unmute your microphone, guys. Like for example, you read or you watch some movies, and there is a issue regarding on like for example, what is the issues we have right now or we are facing right now, like politics. Like for example, it is just for example regarding on that politics. So do you have any movies that you have watched regarding politics or any um any topics that we have here in this slide, like for example death, dealing with peer pressure or facing illness like Midnight Sun, right? Do you have any other may you please share your experiences, guys, to us? Okay, only Miss Nicole Laurenti wants to recite. What about the others po? It's okay, it is about the opinion lang naman. None? Hello? Okay, Miss Nicole, is it okay if I'm going to call you after I call someone?
Yes po, okay.
Okay, thank you so much. May I call please Miss Davy to unmute her microphone and share her experiences if she watched some movies or she read some books regarding these issues or topics.
Hello.
Yes po. Hello, Miss Davy.
I'm sorry, my signal is a bit choppy. What is the question again?
Ayun,
What about what issues?
just give your just share your experiences about the issues, I mean the movies or the books that you have read regarding on the issue that is related on the issues that we have right now, and also the like topics that we have here showing in this on the screen, like for example peer pressure, facing illness, death.
Um um the rest of the movies that no, it is actually um a series titled Anne with an E, and one of the issues that tackled there is the gender diversity, wherein um it shows how women are being suppressed in their society, and men have a strong say to their community, while women were being silent. So I think that is.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing, Miss Davy. So yes, may I call on now Miss Laurenti for sharing her experiences naman.
Yes, it's not actually about politics or what, but I kind of relate it to the facing illness, but not the death though. So it's a story, a short story about a boy, a kid specifically, with his velvet and rabbit stuffed toy. So of course, as a kid, he always cuddles with his toy, brings it whenever or everywhere he goes. But then one day, the boy got sick, and I guess it is called scarlet fever. So of course, when he this the time came that he gets better, but the Velvet and Rabbit, who is her his parents think that it is, you know, full of germs or bacteria. It is contaminated with the fever, even though it is not. They throw this poor toy, and I feel like they also, you know, parang nandidiri na sila dito sa toy, and they are avoiding this boy to play with this toy na kailangan they will burn the toy. So in the present time, I feel like if you have you know, if you are sick, some people will might you know, mandidiri sa'yo, and they will be afraid to get closer to you. Ganun po. Thanks.
Ayun, thank you so much, Mr. Renti, for sharing. So yes, when the other qualities that the young adult literature provides is that it relates the it relates us to the story of the book that we have read, or of the movies that we have watched. Like Miss Laurenti said about the rabbit, right, Miss Laurenti? Is that correct? That that rabbit is dirty, and as on the present times that we have a COVID, and if someone like before, right, that there is like mahigpit, and if there is someone who has a cough, um and the other people will think that, oh, that someone has a COVID-19 because she or he has a cough, like that rabbit who is dirty, and there is no one who wants that rabbit at all, right, Miss Laurenti? So
Yes.
is that correct?
Yes po.
So yes, thank you so much. So yeah, so the qualities of young adult literature is for us to relate our stories, and yeah, to relate what is happening, or from that movies or that books that we have read or what we watched. What is the story that we can learn, or that we can relate from the reality? Okay, so the next one is that it should consider contemporary world perspective, including cultural, social, and gender diversity, environmental issues, global politics, international independence. So this third line or last statement is that it is just associated, or it is just, yeah, it is linked on the first and second qualities of young adult literature. So as I heard from Miss Davy about the movie that she watched regarding the Anne with an E, is that correct, Miss Davy? So there's a gender diversity. So as I said a while ago, there's a relation regarding on the stories or the movies we have watched that we can associate from the real happenings in our world. Okay, so next one, please. Next slide, rather, sorry. Okay, so this picture, I just give you that example. What are the young adult literature, or yeah, young adult literature that we all know? guys, that we are familiar. I think do you are you familiar with this movie, What Happened to Monday?
Yes
Or
po.
do you
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. This movie is such a great movie, guys. I recommend this movie because it is really a great movie that you should watch. Okay, and it is an example of young adult literature. Yeah. Next slide, please. Oh yeah. So the purpose of young adult literature. So the first one is that it teaches young adult about diverse people in the world beyond their community. So the significance of young adult literature is because it gives us or provides us an information regarding the diverse people or about the world that or about what is happening in our world or in our community. Like for example, yeah, like from what I have shared from you guys about the movie What Happened to Monday, um, the thing is that it is about the politics. It is about the seven sisters who is I mean they are fighting for their lives because if that president will know that they are I mean they are seven, they will that president will kill the other sisters or the other sister of Wednesday. So it teaches young adult about the world beyond their community. So that's it. So the other one is it provides pleasure reading. So when we are reading, it gives us a satisfaction, right? So it gives us a happiness. Like for example, we are reading Wattpads. 'Di ba? Kapag when you are reading Wattpads, what are you feeling or what do you feel from that story that you have read from Wattpad? May I call you Miss okay. May I call you Miss Micaela Vaz?
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Yes, when I read Wattpad, yes, I feel enjoyment when I read Wattpad.
Okay, so yeah, okay. So thank you so much. So yeah, when we are reading young adult literature or yeah, specifically Wattpad, it gives us an enjoyment. Like for example, we are reading Hell University, di ba? Si Ace, I mean si Supremo. And what's the name of the girl there? I forgot. So yon, di ba kapag halimbawa may mga nakakakilig na scenes sa kanilang dalawa, it gives us it gives us chill, it gives us kilig that oh my god ano ganyan ganyan tapos it gives us what you call this parang nag-aano pa tayo ng more na parang kahit na like hating gabi na dapat matutulog na tayo, 'di ba? Parang dahil dun sa enjoyment or sa excitement that story provides us or giving us. So what's happening is that we will still continue to read, right? Even we what you call this pang-abutin ng madaling araw. So even na kahit na may exam tayo tomorrow, still we are reading because we find enjoyment to that story, right? So the next one is demonstrate the range of human emotion and allow adolescents to experience them as a result of reading quality literature. So yeah, as I said, it demonstrates or it shows the emotion of us as a human. So if we are reading some stories that has a what you call this that has a context of being happy, then yes, probably we are happy, right? Or if that story is nakakakilig, so yes, definitely nakakakilig, kikiligin tayo. And of course, we are reading stories that is horror. Of course, if you are not a person who is not who is not matatakutin, of course, enjoyin mo. Baka matuwa ka pa kasi horror yon. Like, yung mga massacre stories sa Wattpad, di ba? Like, ano nga yung stories na nabasa ko, yung kay Ara. Basta yun, something na horror siya. Yun, natuwa talaga ako. Tapos, yun, like, for example, if that story is sad naman, of course, there's a time that we were going to cry or yeah, it really a mixed emotion while you are reading a young adult literature. So, okay. And we are going now to the number four, which is the reveals the reality. My connection is poor. But yeah, as I said, the story that I provided or shared with you guys a while ago about what happened to Monday is because it gives us, or it inform us about the realities of life, that that there is a one policy that is happening, like for example in the China, right? There is a one policy, I think. Is it happening, is it still happening right now, the one child policy, or no? I think there is not no one child policy already in China, but yeah, before there is a one child policy. And regarding on the what happened to Monday, there is a one child policy. So it gives us a there's a relation, okay, between the story that we are reading and the movies that we are watching. Okay, so the next one or the last is that in books, the movies that we have watched, it what you call this it introduce us to the writers, and also it introduce us to the also to their work. Okay, so with that, um because there are excellent writers, their work is a obra maestra or a masterpiece. Also, we were going to recommend that to others, right? If we were going to recommend that to others, and like for example, that movie is such a great movie, there's a moral lesson, that movie has a very positive impact to the people. Of course, if we were going to introduce that or recommend us that to others, it will share the positive, the positive impact, and also it gives us the learnings from that movie or from that stories that we have read. Okay, so the next one, I am going now to call the next representative. I'm now going to call next the representative. We're going to discuss about the history of young adult literature. By the way, thank you so much, guys, for listening.
Oh no. Hello? Hello? Am I loud and clear? Hello?
Yes
Naririnig
po.
ako.
Yes.
Can you see me ba? Feel ko.
Yes po.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Miss Salyoso. Hello, good day, everyone. I hope I'm loud and clear. Now, let us start with our brief history of young adult literature. So, young adult literature, before we start, it is a category that is separate from children's literature, of course. Young adult literature and children's literature is different and separate with one another. Young adult literature emerged in the 20th century when teenagers became a powerful force of the economy in the 1930s and gained prominence in the 1960s. So, next slide po. Ayan. 1670s. The term is not yet established as a literary genre, but instead, people read to children religious books like The Pilgrim Progress. The Pilgrim's Progress is the most famous Christian allegory still in print, written by the English writer John Bunyan, published in two parts in 1678 and 1684. The work is a symbolic vision of the good man's pilgrimage through life. From an educational perspective, according to my research, the Pilgrim's Progress is important in the development of literary genres. Yes, it is an allegory, not a novel or fable, but the characters and narrative in the book of John Bunyan make it an important forerunner of the novel. So again, even though young adult literature is not yet established in the 1670s, people read to children and young adults religious books or literary pieces like The Pilgrim Progress. Um, Actually, before 1800s, literature read by children and young adults was largely religious, such books as John Bunyan's The Pilgrim Progress. It is to remind Thou that young people, they are only or they were merely small adults who soon must face the wrath of God. Next slide po. Ayan, 1960s. 1960s, the modern classification of young adult fiction originated during the 1960s after the publication of S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders. Um, Most critics agree that it was in 1967, with the publication of S.E. Hinton's The Outsider, that young adult literature was born. Hinton's groundbreaking work were the first to show the world through the eyes of a teenager. The term young adult was coined by the Young Adult Library Services Association during the 1960s to represent the 12 to 18 age range. The term young adult literature is inherently amorphous, meaning for its constituent terms, young adult and literature are dynamic, changing as culture and society which provide their context change. When the first when the term first found common usage in the late 1960s, it referred to realistic fiction that was set in the real as opposed to imagined contemporary world and addressed problems, issues, and life circumstances of interest to young age approximately 12 to 18. So basically, the 1960s brought about the rise of what has been called new realism. Writers turned to more serious coming of age stories in the 1960s, liberating young adult literature. According to Michael Cart, an author and expert in children's and young adult literature, the 1960s now would be the decade when literature for adolescents could be said to come into its own. What he is saying is we can obviously we can obviously see naman the changes, diba? Because of the published literary works before, tama ba? Because of the published literary works before, overall it impacted or there is a historical development of writing literary pieces. So the novel that marked this change or that marked Michael Cart's words is the literary work written in 1967 by S.E. Hinton, The Outsiders. Its great success could be attributed to its introduction of new real characters and the groundbreaking introduction of violence as a theme in the everyday lives of young adults. Um, Actually, for you to understand, just like what I've said earlier, before 1800s, literature read by children and young adults alike was largely religious, meaning books or something to read before focuses on religion. While in late 1800s naman, the literature focuses on something that built on the belief in the inherent goodness of people, which means something that unlocks the goodness in individual. Or in the other words, or in short, most literature in 1800s still held high values and morals because of belief or religion. So back in 1960s, after the Outsiders, after the Outsiders was published, publishers began waking up to the untapped teenage audience. Hinton's book typified what publishers were looking for in young adult, which talks about the challenges that teens face and offered a mature contemporary realism directed at adolescents. So Hinton's novel or The Outsiders basically changed the way people look at young adult literature. And it became one of the most popular and best known uh, books or literature. So again, The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, published in 1967, was the turning point for young adult fiction, and it changed the way the teenagers read and the way authors wrote for teenagers. Next slide. 1970s. So, I'm sorry, 1970s. Young adult literature blossomed in the 1970s, moving away from the traditional children's stories of previous years in what is called the golden age of young adult literature. Authors published more realistic and controversial titles. So yeah, 1970s. It wasn't until 1970, uh, three, 3 years after the formative publications of The Outsiders, that a newly emergent serious young adult literature was recognized because authors began writing a variety or hard-hitting and realistic titles for teens. Novels published in this decade in 1970 introduced hard-hitting topics such as death, underage drinking, sex, homelessness, and drug use. Next slide. So here are the notable young adult books of 1970. The Chocolate War by Robert Cormier, published in 1974. The Crystal Cave by Mary Stuart, 1970. Heads You Win, Tails I Lose by Isabel Holland, 1973. So some of the early important works of young adult literature were published in the late 1960s and early 1970s. In the 60s and 70s, books like Outsiders and The Chocolate War uh, told stories that dealt with complex emotions and and story. Okay, so books like The Outsiders again and The Chocolate War told stories that dealt with complex emotions and social realities. But Robert Cormier's The Chocolate War, it is one of the most important and influential novels in the history of young adult literature. Um, it was arguably the first young adult novel to trust teens with the sad truth that not all endings are happy ones. So, what we mean by that, I think, the Chocolate War is the first book or story that tackling about a not happy ending like that. So, in this unforgettable book, Cormier took his readers into the dark heart of adolescent anxiety and turned on the lights, revealing a bleak moral landscape. So, Michael Cart, again, an author and expert in children's and young adult literature, describes the 1970s in particular as the first golden age of young adult literature, since it was a decade in which many iconic young adult authors like Mary Stuart, Robert Collier, and Isabel Holland were published. It was during this period that authors of young adult began to write about realistic and previously taboo topics such as drugs, sex and sexuality, and racism. Additionally, authors began to portray previously underrepresented characters such as working class and or minor mi- minoritized tama ba? Minoritized characters. Next slide. Ma, tama yun. Mahinaan mo. Okay, so I'm sorry. 1980s. So in the 1980s po, young adult literature began pushing the envelope in terms of the subject matter that was considered appropriate for their audience. So in the 1980s, young adults or teens grew tired of the real problems novels or topics. So basically, horror and gothic introduced in 1980s naman, authors begin moving past the problem novel and start writing about a variety of genres. Next slide. So here are the novel young adult books of the 1980s. House Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, 1986. The Hero and the Crown by Robin McKinley, 1984. Fallen Angels by Walter Dean Myers, 1983. So, does any one of you have watched the Ghibli movie House Moving Castle? It was I think, an anime movie. But if you watch it, the House Moving Castle, then it's great. Um, it is an adaptation of Diana Wynne Jones' novel po. And but of course, there's a few difference between the film and the book. But we are not going to discuss about it. In the 1980s, young adult literature began pushing the envelope in terms of the subject matter that was considered. Excuse me, wait lang. Sorry. Uh, so yeah. So 1980s books dealing with topics such as rape, suicide, parental death, and murder, which had previously been taboo, saw a significant critical and commercial success. Horror, murder, or death scene. For those who have watched the Ghibli movie House Moving Castle, um, we have seen the war in the movie, diba? It's a war between the kingdom and the neighboring kingdom, partly caused by the disappearance of the neighboring kingdom's prince. So, darker and horror, I think that's the same, diba? Since the movie includes a war, there are scenes of airships dropping bombs and bombs exploding in the movie. But according to my research, in the book daw, uh, the prince is also missing, but the event does not cause a war. But still, let's say it's a bit horror or scary somehow of the witches, because of the witches, demons, and curse mentioned in the story. So, Turnip Head or the Missing Prince is a cursed scarecrow who appears in both the book and movie versions of House Moving Castle. So, yeah, again, horror and gothic introduced in 1980s as young adults or teens grew tired of the real problems or topics uh, what I've mentioned earlier, like uh, sex or yeah, something like that. So something like that I've mentioned earlier. Um, Additionally, young adult young adult fantasy really started getting creative in the 1980s. Up until then, it had mostly been the epic traditional fantasy that frequently involved such staples as a quest, a battle against the dark power, and a and a determined young protagonist, often male, to carry the story. So, meaning mostly young male protagonists in the literary books in 1980s are the main characters or the one who carry the story. But in the 1980s, the author started testing a little bit more, a little bit more of a, uh, yeah, I mean, the author started testing a little bit more and pushing the boundaries, like on what would be considered fantasy. Ayun. Just like Diana Wynne Jones, who published her extremely successful novel or book, and yeah, which is Howl's Moving Castle. It is a fantasy genre, diba? It which branch out from typical fantasy in being humorous, quirky, and altogether unique. Unique. Yeah. Okay. Next slide. Now, next slide po. And thank you. 1990s. The horror genre persisted in the 1990s as the Goosebumps series became immensely popular. But the early 1990s was also a darker time for young adult literature as less young adult novels were being published. So 1990s, many feared the extinction of the genre, but a rise in youth culture in the late 1990s helped young adult literature swing back into favor. Um, there was a brief retraction of the market, but then the teen market grew in the 1990s. So, yeah, young adult literature continued to evolve throughout the 1990s. Theme-based short story collections became popular in the 1990s, and as did novels in verse. The book world began marketing directly to teens for the first time at the turn of the millennium. Yeah, okay. So expansive young adult sections appeared in bookstores, targeting mostly welcoming teens to discover their very own age. Next slide. So of course, our notable young adult books of the 1990s: Goosebumps by R.L. Stine, 1992; Sabriel by Garth Nix, 1995; The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, 1999. The popularity of formulaic romance fiction for young adults extended into other genres such as horror, most notably the Goosebumps series, as did the focus on white middle class heterosexual characters. The trend of these mass-produced books written by groups of authors and packaged under one series continued into 1990s. However, uh, they have since come under criticism for diminishing the quality of fiction for young people. Realistic fiction or problem novels still what do you call this? Still fell out of fashion in the new millennium in 1990s. Um, the trend of genre fiction like science fiction, horror, and fantasy in particular uh, grew with blockbuster authors and series. So 1990s, although problem novels fell out of fashion, still we have a literary piece that focuses on social issues or social problem like the book The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. So it is one of the greatest book that I have read. But yeah, of course, I prefer the movie adaptation of that book po. But wala lang, share ko lang. So these books and the screen and their subsequent film uh, adaptations demonstrated that young adult could be very profitable or make young adult literature more seen because of its own uniqueness. They also promoted the author as a brand or something that already existed in the adult fiction market and highlighted the crossover appeal of young adults to adults. Okay, next slide, please. So yeah, 2000, um, 2000. In the early 2000s, different books awards like Prince Awards, Edwards Awards, Alex Awards were created specifically to honor young adult literature. At the same time, Twilight and The Hunger Games popularized paranormal and dystopian series that reigned supreme in the mid to late 2000s. So by 2000, both young adult literature and its reader had changed significantly from its founding in the 1970s or yeah, 1970s. So, as young adult literature had matured, authors have begun to incorporate more complex characters, subjects, and situations. So, the boundaries of young adult literature have expanded as authors explore topics of cruelty and crime, personal abuse, and racial violence, accompanied by a change in the perspective represented in literature. The previously unheard voices of gays, lesbians, and homeless, and people with disabling conditions now join the voices of young adult literature in the 2000. Meaning, in the 2000, we began to see a more of a literary work that is tackling about the stories of unheard voices of gays, lesbians, homeless, and many more. So, yeah, 2000 is also the golden age of vampires and dystopian, and different books awards is introduced in this decade to honor young adult literature. Next slide. So yeah, here are the notable young adult books again of the 2000. Twilight by Stephanie Meyer 2005, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins 2008, The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot 2000. So the young adult market bloomed in the 2000 largely in response to some high-profile best-selling young adult series such as Twilight and The Hunger Games and their subsequent film adaptations. Twilight, in particular, attracted a lot of both negative and positive uh, attention, despite monopolizing the young adult bestseller list in the United Kingdom between 2006 and 2016, and being the and being the 12th best-selling book of all time in the United Kingdom in 2012. Uh, Twilight, the series received a criticism for being formulaic, problematic, and badly written now. But but this book or this series did not stop spawning a raft of copycat novels and increasing demand for the paranormal romance. Uh, basta yun. There is an increase for the paranormal romance genre after the Twilight published. So many more genre like in the Hunger Games and Twilight was published. So yeah. Uh, Next slide. I'm sorry. Wala pala. That's the end of my part. And now I'm going to conclude my part. Again, in the beginning of 1960s, we have seen a wider range of topics or genre addressed in young adult literature. What began as a stereotypical depiction of characters from different cultures has begun to a more better and more realistic to representation. Um, the history of young adult literature, we began to see more authors tackling about current events and situations in ways that we are engaging and meaningful to adolescents. Fast forward to today, we have a lot or much uh, wider range of topics and a more diverse representations of protagonists. As young adult literature grew, it saw a dramatic change from being controlled by religion or the government, and now to today's free speech market that is flooded with thousands of amazing titles that cover every topic and genre. Additionally, I want to add more. In the 19th century pala, um, which I did not add in my part, uh, 19th century literature for young women emphasized home and family values, conforming to societal expectations, while while literature for young men or boys largely emphasized that hard work and traditional values would be rewarded by success. Or in the other words, or in short, we call it domestic and dime novels. Domestic focused on stories for young women about being a wife or homemaker. Dime novels, on the other hand, it tackles about adventure and other plots that would attract young adult boys. Um, I've read in some resources that uh, na what do you call this na dime novels for boys is also related to stories about military. So yeah, so from the change of only girls books or books made for boys to books that are now gender specific. Tama ba? Yeah. So we now give our young adults readers what they deserve, and that is the right to read and enjoy the books they want and deserve. Um, we are looked to have seen a huge insurgence in young adult literature and hold on to the hope that more amazing stories or literary works will be produced for this all important age of literacy development. Traditionally, literature adults wanted children and young adults to read reflected the social morals or expectations of all time. And over the last years and decades, from 1680s, from what we have discussed, up to this decade 2000, reading and literacy have seen a dramatic growth and role in today's society. And yeah, now that is the end of my presentation, or that is the end of my part. I hope we learned something from me, from the history of young adult literature. And that's all. May I call Miss Andrada to continue our discussion. And thank you. Have a good day.
So, hello everyone. I am audible.
Yes.
Yes po.
Okay, thank you. So now I will be discussing the genres of young adult literature. So, before I start, may I call Miss Kabangunay to at least give me three genres that she might know in young adult literature. Okay, so Miss Kabangunay already typed her answer in the comment section. So she said fiction, non-fiction, and poetry. Okay, so we will know if your answers, Miss Kabangunay, is included in the genres of young adult literature. So now I will start discussing these genres. Thank you, by the way, Miss Kabangunay. So the first genre is the adventure. So adventure fiction usually involves the main character going on a quest or journey and experiencing extreme conditions. So the adventure may or may not involve history but has plenty of action. Some adventure fiction could also involve elements of mystery, dystopia, or fantasy. So the second one is chick lit. So penned by women authors, these books can be light and funny and usually deal with relationships, dating, and romance. So some chick lit also cover more delicate themes such as pregnancy, abortion, weight problems, or drug abuse. The next one is the classics. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the next one is the classics genre. So the classics are titles that have established themselves as distinguished examples of penmanship of a particular period in history. So classics are time honored, which is why there are classics and modern classics. Then the fourth one is the contemporary fiction. This fiction is a kind of fiction that stands out, gets mentioned, and recommended. So usually set in the recognizable present, and contemporary fiction is realistic with contemporary characters, events, and dialogue. Next slide, please. So the next one is diaries. So diaries narrated in a diary format. These fiction or non-fiction tales are personal recounts, usually played out day by day. The narration could be based on an adventure, an historical event, or a personal experience. And the next one is the dystopian. So dystopian fiction is new or alternative worlds or futuristic societies and is characterized by degradation in values, social hierarchy, terror, and oppression. So these titles often include elements of science fiction, conflict, and romance. Then next slide, please. The next one is family and relationships. So books that reflect children and teens and even adults having to undergo some kind of inner conflict or interpersonal conflict at some point in their life, including come of age stories. So this may involve also relationships, bullying, decision making, or identity crisis. Then the next one is fantasy. So think imaginary lands, myths, and magic. So fantasy novels, by their simplest definition, include at least one unrealistic element. Common example of these elements include magic, ghosts, talking to animals, and mythical creatures. These books can take one place in the real or imaginary world or in any time of period, such as contemporary, futuristic, or historical. Next slide, please. So the next one is the horror. So this genre of books has been written with the intention to scare the reader with glory details of blood, ghosts, vampires, skeletons, demons, and the supernatural world. Then the history or the historical fiction, these novels have the story and characters pitched against a significant backdrop of time or history of a place or a country. So war, social history, and political instability often feature in this historical fiction. Next slide, please. So the next one is the humorous stories. So stories that cause you to smile or laugh out loud at the quirkiness of their characters or stories. So this style of writing is crucial to young adult literature because of the motivation that it gives to young adults to read. So humor tends to be a lighter form of literature, so therefore making it easier to read and comprehend. So humor also tends to be relatable to for young adult readers because laughter becomes a connection point between the reader and the text itself. Then the next one is mystery. So these are Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie's of the collection. So like a detective or other professional solves a crime or series of crimes. So young adult mystery or thriller fiction is a broad genre of teen fiction containing elements of the mystery and thriller adult genre. So young adult young adult mysteries focus on solving crimes, usually a murder. Next slide, please. So the next one is poetry. So rhyme is found everywhere in songs, chants, jingles, books, or as novels in verse. So poetry covers a vast range of subjects and is often used in school and homes as read alouds. And then paranormal is also part of the genres of young adult literature. So novels dealing with the paranormal or supernatural include themes such as good and evil, relationships, and conflict along with creatures such as werewolves, vampires, or ghosts. So it's the type of fiction where occurrences cannot be logically explained, such as telekinesis, or extrasensory perception rather. Then, then these novels span other genres such as fantasy, mystery, horror, and romance. Next slide, please. Thank you. And speaking of romance, so this can stand alone, but romance is often a feature of other genres such as dystopian and supernatural literature. So, the Crazy Things Girls Do for Love by Diane Sheldon is pure romance, while the Jacqueline Wilson's The Girl series touches on issues many adolescents can identify with, while the Stephanie Meyer's Twilight series has an appealing combination of the supernatural and romance. The next one is science fiction. So the science fiction is fiction based on imagined future scientific or technological advances and major social or environmental changes. So frequently portraying space or time travel and life on other planets. So the next slide please, thank you. So the next one is the short stories. So short stories are delectable anthology of the best of authors and their style. So short stories could be a selection of stories by one author or a collection of various authors. Then the steampunk, it is hard to define, but this genre is said to be a subgenre of science fiction and fantasy that includes technology or gadgets from the 19th century. So some people describe it as the old aesthetics of the Victorian age mixed with modern technology. So next slide, please. Thank you. So for the last genre of the young adult literature, this is the LGBT or the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender genre. So this genre of literature deals with the struggle for identity, acceptance, and relationships of protagonists who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. The next slide, please. Thank you. So now let's talk about the examples of each genres of the young adult literature. So the first one is The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, noveling Raspberry's voyage in three. Then the chiclet, yes, thank you. The chiclet is the examples of this is the 10 things we shouldn't have done by Sarah, and then the next one is the Hello Gorgeous series by Taylor Morris. Next slide, please. The examples of classics genre is the John Marsden's Tomorrow When the War Began series, which could be considered a modern classic. When the next one is the In Lane 3 by Alex Archer. Then the contemporary fiction examples are The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon and The Life of Pi by Jan Martel. Next slide, please. Thank you. The example of diaries is a Diary of a Wimpy Kid by Jeff Kinney, which is very popular with young readers. And then the example of dystopian is The Insurgent, as well as the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins, the Maze Runner series by James Dashner, and the Divergent trilogy by the Veronica Roth. Then the family and relationships examples are Blue Wizard by Nell Schusterman and Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Then I Am Not Esther by Fleur Biel, a New Zealand example, and Sia Simon by David Hill. Next slide, please. Thank you. Another example of fantasy genre is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, which involves elves, wizards, and goblins. Then the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling, which involves wizards and witches. And the last one is the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan, which involves Greek and Roman gods. Then the next one is the LGBT example, which is The Vast Fields of Ordinary. Then the horror is The Graveyard Book of Nail. Please, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So the next one is the history or the historical fiction. Set. And then In the Shadow of Banyan by Ratner, set against the Cambodian killing are Swim the Fly by Don and is by Andy Griffiths. Sorry. History. So series John Grisham rather, Harper's, then the Alex Rider series Horowitz. Next slide, please. Thank Okay, so the poetry the example of these are the Beautiful Creatures series by Cami Garcia and Margaret Stoll. Then The Wolves of Maggie is Steve White series by Joan Eichen is an older example of this genre. Then the next one is the romance. So The Crazy Things Girls Do for Love is the example of this genre. Next slide, please. So the next one So the example genres I Cinder, the Slayer, the Enders by Orson Scott Card, Across the Universe by Beth Revis, and then books such as the Divergent series by Veronica Roth, of book series falls into both science fiction and dystopian genres. So the short stories, the example is by Dick King Smith, and then the Punk, which the example of these are Mortal Engines. Hello, naririnig po ako?
Yes po. Kaso
Bag
mahina yung paputol-putol.
Oo, ang bagal kasi ng internet ko eh. Saan ako nag-stop?
Go ahead lang tayo sa steampunk.
Examples. Ulitin ko na lang yung examples niya. Hindi ko kasi nakikita na yung screen ni pero sige. So, the examples of steampunk genre are Mortal Engines by Philip Reeve, Steampunk, an anthology of fantastically rich and strange stories edited by Kelly Link and Gavin J. Grant. And then the last one is the Soulless series by Gail Carriger. So, I guess that would sum up my report for the different genres of young adult literature. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Suzanne, for that informative discussion. And now that we are on the end of our discussion, guys, I would like to ask someone to share her or his learning. Just your opinion, guys. It is just your learning about the topic, and don't worry, it is just an opinionated answer. Okay, so this is the last that we are going to do in our discussion before we end our discussion. So yeah, to those people who have no yet score, I mean points, you can unmute your microphone po. Hello, Miss Kaisen, are you still there?
Yes po.
Ayun.
What share your learnings ako. What I learned in this discussion is the different genres of young adult, right? Young adult literature is that we have here the adventure, the chick lit, the classics, the contemporary, diaries, dystopian, family relationship, fantasy. Now we're very familiar. Now we're very familiar as well as horror, history, and that's all.
Ayun. Thank you so much, Miss Kaisen. And with that, guys, thank you so much for listening to our discussion. So with that, I hope you learned something from us, from our discussion, and have a nice day. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.